Well, hello again. Sorry it has been so long since the last video. It's been a struggle for most of us with the COVID-19 pandemic and with people being off work. I do hope and pray that you are all well and that you're staying safe. Today we're going to talk a little bit about forensic science. So as Pastor Andy dives into Romans chapter 8, he will take a look at the forensic work Christ has done for us on our behalf. So when it comes to explaining forensics, who better than a law enforcement officer? Over my almost 30 years in law enforcement, I have had many opportunities to use forensic science in my many different cases. While as an instructor at the Law Enforcement Academy, I have even taught some classes on forensic science. I want to start by asking two questions. First, why do we need forensic science? And second, why do law enforcement officers go to such enormous lengths to investigate crimes? Well, the best answer that I can give to these questions are justice is very important in our society, and it's vital that people who commit crimes should be found and punished. Victims of crime need to know that the perpetrators will not walk away free. We can stop crimes from happening in the future only if we catch and punish the people responsible for the crimes that have happened in the past. So with stakes so high, suspects in crimes will go to great lengths to prove their own innocence. And their legal teams will do their very best to reject any evidence, however scientific that it may seem. Sometimes cases turn into battles between opposing scientists who become what we call expert witnesses for the defense or the prosecution. A guilty suspect could walk free if their legal team can refute any scientific evidence that's presented against them. In the same instance, though, an innocent person could be imprisoned or even executed if the jury accepts flawed evidence, which would help to convict them. That's why science matters so much in criminal investigations. So how can you use science to investigate a crime? How do you use science to solve a crime? Well, let's take a few minutes and take a closer look. The place where a crime takes place is what we call the crime scene. Once a serious crime has been reported, officers head straight for the scene of the crime and seal it off. This prevents anyone from removing or destroying any evidence that may be there. An officer's first job is to make sense of the crime scene. And basically that means he needs to understand exactly what has just happened. There are often many possible explanations for what has happened. So establishing the exact sequence of events immediately before and after the crime was committed is a very vital part of any criminal investigation. Depending on the type of crime and how it was committed, there can be many different types of evidence at the scene. There might be fingerprints on doors or windows, on drinking glasses left on tables, or on many other objects that are sitting around the scene. If someone has been shot, there could be discarded bullets or even powder residues. One of the hardest things in using forensic science is separating out the really important evidence from all the other things that we might find when we're looking. For example, you may discover hairs on the carpet in a bank where a robbery has just taken place. They could well be hairs from the robber's head although they could equally be hairs from hundreds or thousands of people who passed innocently through the bank over the last few weeks, months, or even a year. Some of the most important evidence in a criminal investigation comes from the things people see and hear. Officers always appeal and look for witnesses. These are people who have observed events before and after the crime took place, both to help the officer establish what has happened, also maybe to find out who might be responsible. In complex cases, officers can find themselves interviewing hundreds or even thousands of witnesses. All of these statements, a statement is the written description of what people say they saw or heard. They have to be checked and compared. To complicate matters further, statements often disagree because people don't always remember events accurately, especially in stressful situations, or if a long time has elapsed between the crime being committed and the police officer asking the questions. More than one witness may see different angles and see different things. Sometimes the police will interview a person which may be a suspect. This is a person who is thought to be involved in the crime. And they do not necessarily tell the truth when they're being questioned. Suspects are usually interviewed much more thoroughly and formally as an ordinary witness. These interviews may take place in the police station or the law enforcement building. There are usually lawyers present, both for the defense and for the prosecution. They are typically tape recorded. Now, in Missouri, it's required to be audio taped and videotaped. So anything the witness says can be used as accurate evidence in court. Sometimes suspects are interviewed repeatedly over a period of weeks or months. This is to see if their stories remain consistent. So now let's turn back to the lab. Officers will be examining evidence collected from the crime scene to look for what we call clues. So how is this evidence used? One way that an officer will discover something is to look for something that's unusual amongst the evidence, something that might shed a light on who might have committed the crime. Like I stated before, forensics is a science. It's a science dedicated to the methodical gathering of analysis of evidence, which helps us to establish fact. There are always opinions. Evidence helps us find the fact. And this is something that can be presented in a legal proceeding. The field of forensics is sometimes so vast that it requires specialists, or criminologists, as they're called, in everything from, let's say, tire track analysis to odontology, which is actually the study of and the structure of how teeth decay and tooth disease. Some may study the lands and grooves that make every gun barrel unique. The microscopic evidence and transfer evidence, such as clothing and hair fibers, blood spatter. Forensic entomology, that's the study of insects. There are many different fields of specialization when it comes to forensic science. Over the next few weeks, we'll look into some of the different areas of forensic science and how each works to help us provide fact. I'll see you next week.